Imagine that every person on Earth was represented by a cup. The liquid in this cup is each individual person's self-esteem, happiness, and self-worth. The liquid goes up and down over the course of a person's life, over reasons that could be very little or life-changing. Some examples of filling your cup could be big things like getting a job, making friends, a marriage, the birth of your son. But it could be small, like remembering to shave every day, brushing your teeth, doing your homework, or a movie night with friends. But life is not that simple, and the liquid of self-esteem can go down. Tragedy can strike. The death of a family member or friends. Those can be extreme situations where people's cups go so low that they lose hope and lose motivation to generate their own liquid. On those rare occasions, their friends, family, and professionals will sacrifice a small portion of their liquid to the stricken person in their time of crisis and use that emotional energy to help them realize that people love them and that they are valued. Time heals all wounds, and eventually that person will be able to rejoin society and do things needed to recover that self-worth. What I have described to you so far is a normal, healthy human relationship throughout the world. A system that recognizes that self-worth primarily comes from within, through your actions and the choices you make. But there is one exception to this rule that breaks this relationship, and that would be the case of a narcissist cup, represented in black. This is a person who has lost their ability to generate their own self-esteem. They are unhappy, they hate themselves, and because of that, they take the positive liquid from others in order to feel valued. Those crisis situations for a normal person become the norm. This attracts bystanders motivated by a human compunction to help, just sacrifice some of their energy, and for a brief moment, a person with the black cup will feel okay. Maybe even euphoric. But this feeling fades. It always fades because it does not come from within, and they are back to where they started, depressed and unhappy. So the cycle starts again, with people sacrificing their energy to help the person with the black cup, only for him to be back where he started. Slowly, the people who helped him become more and more like the black one, sucked of energy from an emotional black hole. When they try to pull away for their own sake, the black cup at first may say, "You need to fill my cup." So you do. The second time, he may scream at you. He may say, "You never loved me. Fill my cup to prove it." So you do. The 20th time in this relationship, he has threatened his final escalation. "If you do not fill my cup, I will commit suicide." At this stage, you, the person, has given all this energy with nothing to show for it. You have a choice to make. Cut ties or lose your happiness because you have nothing left to give. The narcissist realizes this and will throw you away, so he can just do it to another person. At that stage, you're done. This is where we are at in the story of Boogie 2988, the narcissist that has extracted the emotional energy out of the millions who have tried to help him. A man whose selfishness is only matched by his gluttony, sloth, wrath, and pride. A man who's so mentally ill it beggars belief, but refuses all suggestions to get help. He continuously demands more sympathy, more emotion, more on what he calls love. How did we get here? Well, I have a story to tell. Sit a while and listen to the story of Boogie 2988, YouTube's blackest cup. Boogie presents himself as a nice guy, a man who has got your back, no matter the cost. While on the other side, his enemies present him as a monster who abuses his position of power. I will argue that the second interpretation is closer to reality, but it's still not accurate. In reality, Boogie is an addict.
Boogie readily admits that he's addicted to food.
Food is the center of my universe. Yeah, when I'm eating food, I'm thinking about the next thing I'm eating or thinking about the thing I'll eat after that.
That is who he truly is. Not evil, but nowhere close to good or nice. A man whose only purpose is to satiate those addictions, and nothing exists outside of them. All things serve Boogie, not the other way around. This is doubly true for people who hold that precious emotional energy he needs. If you look at his life through this prism, all the pieces that do not make sense finally do. He has an addiction to many things. To food, the internet, to sex, to money, to hoarded plastic children's crap that he does not need, to pity and to love. While all these things are among those that make life great, Boogie has taken each and every one of them to a ludicrous extreme. In the right amount, each of these complement life. But to Boogie, They are his life. Gorging himself on food until he can no longer walk. Buying toys until they cover all 4 corners of his room. So addicted to pity that he streamed the aftermath of his divorce to the fans who are all willing to give it to him. So addicted to profit and money, he has sold fraudulent mental health products to his fans. Each addiction is extremely serious, but the most important is his addiction to what he calls love, because it is where the justification for most of the abuse and emotional manipulation he perpetuates on other people.
And loving fellow Americans regardless of their skin color or their sexuality, and that we should just be nice to each other, and bullying each other is not the way to do it and will never achieve what you want to achieve. The only way to achieve harmony is love and respect and empathy, and if you don't show it, you're a bully and fuck you.
Boogie often tells anyone that comes across him that he loves them, be it his fans or critics. It's one of the primary ways he projects his nice guy image. You have probably seen a video or tweet and thought that is a nice, but slightly inappropriate sentiment. I will demonstrate that this is a far more nefarious, and I can assure you it's not the few times he has said it. Boogie will claim that he loves you as often as you take breaths each day. It is a farce. It is a sly attempt to lower your defenses so that you will place emotional investment into Boogie. We can't know if he's consciously doing it, unaware of the consequences. At best, Boogie is loving at you, not in or with you. From a distance, which means he avoids the multiple obligations that comes with being in love with a person. The most important being putting those you love's interests before your own. We know that Boogie does not do this, because it's not possible. You simply can't put that many people's interests ahead of your own, which is exactly why he hasn't. It's fake love. It's not real. Unusual social relationships between a celebrity and their fans has been extensively documented, and Boogie's relationship with his audience is on steroids. There's no professional distance. It can feel like he's talking to you when he makes a video, but in reality, he is talking to a camera and a like bar, a YouTube algorithm, nothing more. The connection you may feel is artificially constructed by a shrewd manipulator and the technology that is the internet.
Boogie 298 coming at you live again through the power of the internet.
Boogie claims he is not an abusive person, that he's never engaged in such behavior in his life.
Which is not, it's not even remotely close to true. I've never been abusive to my wife. I've never been abusive to nobody. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
We know this to be not true, and his abusive behavior has been documented throughout the years. There are many manifestations of it, but by far the most important is emotional extraction of his audience through suicide threats. Boogie's history of threatening suicide to get the things he wants is nothing short of extensive. He has made it clear on multiple occasions, the only reason he is alive is because of YouTube and the people supporting him.
It means a lot. For those of you who have empathized with me, you have saved me. I hope you know that. At least as best I can be saved. So
I'll always be a fan. To know that I have a core audience that is never going to drink the Kool-Aid, that's never going to believe these horrible, monstrous lies about me. It saved my life. I hope.
I think, and this is my opinion, I think when the time comes, I'm going to have no problem pulling the trigger, or like once I've fully given up hope, you know, once I've fully given up hope, once I'm fully ready to go, once the internet has forgotten about me and you guys don't need me anymore and I'm not needed around anymore, I'm just miserable and alone. I don't think I'll have any problem pulling the trigger if that time ever came.
The logical conclusion of such a statement is obvious. If his fans were to withdraw their support, challenge his behavior, or start criticizing him more extensively, he would kill himself, because he has nothing left to live for, and it will be your fault. This is not me playing YouTube psychologist, this is something he has stated outright, with no shame. This effectively places his life not in his own hands, but in the hands of others. In short, the internet is responsible for the life of Boogie 2988. And not himself, because that is how Boogie defined the parameters. This is why Boogie's fans are so notoriously aggressive to his critics. They believe his life is in danger. He has convinced them through words that his critics are out to kill him. And if they do not act on his behalf, he will take a gun to his head, and the critics will pull the trigger. In Boogie's mind, he is not the one responsible, but the fans that did not support him, the trolls that made fun of him, or the critics who dared question him. It's everyone else's fault not Boogie's. The very rare times it's not, there's always a caveat. Always a manager who gave him bad advice, or a teacher who gave him false information. If you're a normal person, you would naturally be concerned by this behavior. Boogie is threatening to suicide. Why doesn't someone call the police? Why does someone not act to save his life? Well, they have. And unfortunately, when people acted, Boogie rejected the help and would set the parameter that this behavior was, quote, unhelpful, unquote.
I told him that all of this shit is making me suicidal, and I didn't want to fucking kill myself. That I might kill myself in a month. I might kill myself when I take care of my other shit. But I don't want to fucking kill myself tonight. I want to do it on my terms. I want to do it on my time.
In this clip, Boogie threatened to commit suicide to a friend who had every right to call the police, and he is hung up on the fact it interfered on his date.
The fire department coming into the house in the middle of a date, by the way. All of this is happening in the middle of a date tonight, by the way.
I mean, seriously, who gives a damn? Boogie has insinuated, threatened, and talked about suicide on hundreds of occasions, and he thinks the public's first priority is avoiding him being mildly embarrassed. It goes further because Boogie tried to paint the people who tried to save his life as villains in this story.
Please, I'm going to block you. I don't want to talk to you about it anymore. Just leave me alone. I don't want to fucking blow my brains out tonight. I just want to be left alone, man. And so please just leave me alone. Please, I tried to convince you. I tried to show you. Please just leave me alone. And they were so worried that I was going to hurt myself that they called welfare, did a welfare check and did the social media stuff, which is fine. I'm glad they did. I do want to make it very clear to anybody out there, if I thought I was going to blow my brains out, talking to a cop is not going to change that. I don't know what anybody expects to think about that. That is not for me. That is for whoever does that. You're not doing me a fucking favor. You're not doing me a fucking favor. You're making yourself feel good, and that's fine. But you're not doing me a favor, man. I know on some twisted level you think you are, but it's not gonna fucking fix anything.
This is a monstrous thing to say. The term people use for such behavior is gaslighting. Let's be clear. The person in question did the right thing. They had every right to call the authorities, regardless if it was inconvenient to Boogie. Telling the fanbase they did something wrong is outrageous. Boogie put these people in a stressed situation with the intent to extract emotion out of them, making them think if they did not acquiesce, he would kill himself. It doesn't matter what Boogie's intent was because the fanbase and Boogie's friends are not mind readers and cannot tell if a threat by Boogie is actionable. Thankfully, the person in question did the right thing and called higher powers and placed it in their hands, rather than giving up to this man's greedy fingers. The only help Boogie wants is the help he has narrowly defined, which naturally comes in the form of filling the rapidly emptying cup of his narcissism.
It means a lot. For those of you who have empathized with me, you have saved me. I hope you know that. At least as best I can be saved. So,
more serotonin from positive comments that always wears off. More dopamine from a growing like bar and a view count. That fuzzy, prickly feeling that spreads across your chest and the back of your neck is fleeting and has to always be replaced by the emotional energy of others. No matter how much energy you take, that temporary satisfaction always fades. It is a certainty. Boogie refers to this behavior from himself and fans as love, and through emptying themselves of emotion to support him, they love him. But if this is love and not emotional codependence, then I am the King of England. This is emotional abuse. There are no ifs or buts, no complications or context that can mitigate the damage that Boogie has inflicted upon his fans, his friends, his enemies, or anyone who invested into this story. Telling people you will commit suicide and then tying their hands when they try to call the authorities, blaming them for your own manipulation, rejecting all help except the help that you narrowly define is textbook emotional abuse. No one, and I mean no one, wants to be the guy to accuse a person using suicide threats for personal gain for several reasons. For one, there is always a chance that the subject might actually follow through with it. That fear is why people publicly avoid talking about Boogie, because they fear the potential backlash from society. You could be unfairly branded as a murderer because of someone's stupidity. It is an effective shield. This is something Boogie knows and has verbalized as part of his endgame, as a weapon against his critics.
before I give up. But when I give up, I want to make it very fucking clear to you. My plan is to delete my Twitter, to delete my Twitch, to delete my YouTube, post one video on all of them that says goodbye, says that I screwed up, says that this is what happens when you serial harass somebody. Here's what happens when you attack somebody daily and daily and day in and day out. And then when you guys no longer remember me, I can die. I don't deserve to die over it, guys. I really don't. I really fucking don't. I really fucking don't. But I want to make it very clear, you're fucking killing me.
This confirms that these threats are not real. And if they are, it is irrelevant, because either way, they are attempts to manipulate the audience to get the things he wants. In this case, the thing he wants is fake positivity from everyone else for a dopamine hit. He holds everyone over the barrel with his narcissism. If he does go through it with it after seeing that clip, he's nothing short of a monster, undeserving of any pity. If you're suicidal, go to hospital. I and the rest of the internet will dial right now, but don't waste our time. We are not interested over potential dates we may ruin, so don't tell us about it. We don't care. The well is dry. There's nothing more you can extract. All life is precious, but not at the cost of ransom, blackmail, and psychological abuse. One of the most worrying aspects of Boogie's behavior is his conscious effort to position himself as a mental health care advocate for both profit and reputation. Yet Boogie has consistently shown he has zero understanding of his own mental illness, let alone what afflicts others. There are a few examples of this. For one, his misinformation is notorious. Boogie will claim that his mental illness causes suicidal thoughts, which is why he tells everyone that he meets about it. This is half-true, and a dangerous half-truth. While mental illness explains the thoughts, it does not in any way explain the behavior of going up to strangers and associates and telling them at every waking moment of the day that you're going to commit suicide. This is unlikely caused by PTSD, depression, and anxiety. It's more rationally explained by a serious personality disorder. Many people react to suicide differently, but he is actively telling people this is common behavior when the opposite is true. As a general rule of thumb, people don't talk about suicide because they know, in normal human society, it causes them to get involuntarily committed. These are real consequences that Boogie defies, and every day he continues making suicide threats while not committing himself, tells people that this disgusting behavior is okay. It's 100 times worse because he has positioned himself as a mental health care advocate. It is just beyond the pale. His misinformation goes next level when he is actively promoting using his addiction to self-medicate his mental state, telling people this is appropriate behavior. This is most notable in his food addiction.
My primary focus is not on my body right now. My primary focus is on my brain. What I'm not doing is I'm not cutting back on what I eat because food makes me happy and I want to be happy right now. So I'm eating some of the foods that I shouldn't be eating because I like being happy because I'm struggling with my mental health right now, and food helps me with that.
Boogie has tried to sell a story of weight loss for nearly a decade. He has actively included the audience to get invested in the story for multiple reasons. One would be the clicks, because a weight loss story sells. But the main reason why he does it is the comments telling him how proud he is of him, to keep it up, and that they love him. Every time he loses weight, he will post, blog, or whatever, and will receive that flood of dopamine. The problem is Boogie hasn't shed a single pound due to hard work that he didn't immediately put back on due to his food addiction. It has been almost a decade, and those nice comments have finally turned. People hate being strung along, which has caused a subset of people to document how he has been handling his weight loss. Boogie undertook an extremely dangerous procedure to get the weight he is now, about 350 pounds, or 158 kilos. He did not lose a single pound to exercise or eating healthy. Regardless, Boogie seems to be in denial, and he's still extremely overweight. To be clear, Boogie still eats As he's always done, despite his claims otherwise. The only reason he hasn't ballooned up is because the surgery prevents him from indulging his most obvious impulse. He has done absolutely none of the work to get the handle on his fit addiction, and obviously lies about how hard he's working.
Now, part of that is my body. I am walking more and more every day. I could show you the blisters on my feet for how much I've been walking if you want to see them. I got fucking wounds on the bottom of my feet because I'm walking as much as I can. I'm walking on my treadmill. I'm walking my dog. I'm going to theme parks. I'm trying to up my mobility. I'm doing my exercise. I'm doing everything I can do.
Oh, was walking from Space Mountain to Splash Mountain arduous for you, Boogie? Disneyland is known for breaking the backs of men. I must ask, how did you survive? You got blisters on your feet? Oh, you poor broken soul. Yes. Show us the bottom of your feet, and we will wrap them in oil and bandages. We will put your feet in water just like Jesus did to his apostles. Boogie, if you were working as hard as you say you are, then you wouldn't have to say it or show it. The audience would see it. What does blisters on your feet have to do with anything? Who cares? The results are what matters, and you have no results because you put no real effort. Between the suicide threats and the lies, how does he justify this? Well, Boogie's primordial event, allegations against his parents and other sibling of extreme emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. I have grown extremely suspicious of this story, to the point where I doubt it's even true. It is terrible to say, but there are hundreds of reasons for this suspicion, and originally I've written a 1,000-word essay contrasting every consistency and omission. But it wasn't worth it, and I'm just going to go through a few major points. For one, as the years roll by, Boogie has told this story hundreds if not thousands of times, and with each passing year it grows in intensity and frequency. His first major success in telling this story was in 2011, where he describes an alcoholic and detached father and a verbally and emotionally abusive mother.
A lot of people have asked me to draw my life story, and it's kind of sad here in America. And of course my dad mined coal. It was a very hard job, which made him very sad. And my mother was a teacher, but she was always very sad. And not only was she sad, but she was pretty angry about her life and everything that had happened up till then. My sister Carla, she was kind of crazy, actually. And eventually she ran away, and my brother went off to college, which left me alone at the age of 9 with my crazy, angry, depressed family, which really kind of sucked. My mother, who was always sad all the time, and sometimes she'd get really angry and she'd scream at me, and that happened almost every day. And sometimes she'd hit me, and that happened every day too.
Fast forward to 2019, it has escalated into a story in which both his mother, father, and another relative were pedophiles, child-bashing, rapists, whose crimes rival the worst America has to offer. There is a clear escalation in the story every time he tells it, with new horrific details that make you wonder why it wasn't said in the first place. The second big reason is that there is never any consistency in the story. The basic facts never line up. The story is about pedo-rapists, his parents, which leads to the question, how was it covered up? Boogie is from a small town. How was this kept secret? There are two explanations that I have heard. One is that his mother was able to act differently in public than at home, which is plausible. Not something I will believe, but plausible. But Boogie being Boogie, he has contradicted this with the most ridiculous story I have ever heard.
As best we could. And I'm like, why didn't you get me taken out of the home? If you knew I was being beaten and molested, why didn't you take me out of the home? And she said, your mother once told that if they ever tried to take you out of the home the way they did your sister, she would kill you because you were all she had left. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, so here's the thing. Mom had also told me the same thing many, many times. So I knew that that was correct. I knew that that's how she felt, and I knew that's what she said.
Intentionally or not, he is alleging in that clip that there was a conspiracy between his teachers and mother covering up serious crimes. Boogie likely went to public school, which would mean that the teachers were employed by the state. The teacher by law are agents of the state in this allegation. That means that the state The state of Arkansas and the United States government covered up Boogie's abuse to avoid the risk of Boogie being killed by his mother. He is alleging that the state had a hand in covering this up. There is no way this is true. If this is true, we are talking about a scandal that is equal to the Catholic Church or Penn State. If it is true, this must be investigated now. We must know what happened. This is a crime of unimaginable proportions. I don't believe it, but we cannot take that risk. But think about it. Think about the teacher's motivation. It does not make any sense. No rational person would buy that. It's retarded. I refuse to believe the teachers would act solely on the motivation that it will prevent the mother from killing Boogie. They risk not only their jobs and livelihood, but their freedom and families by covering this up. When a simple call to the police could have staged a rescue. Boogie has no insight into people and what motivates them. The fact that their primary concern was his life and not their own shows you how narcissistic he is. It is that narcissism that exposes him on this ridiculous story. But this is one story. Surely it does not represent a pattern when it comes to his parents. Well, dear viewer, I have one more for you. Let me set the stage. It's been 12 or so years since Boogie has last been to his mother's house. It is a bombed wreck, with trash all over the floor, with everything astray, the furniture torn up and used as fuel for druggies who make this place a home on certain night. According to Boogie, this house does not even have a roof.
Here's you and Twitter. This is what's left of the house. People have come in here and wrecked it and destroyed it.
So it's open to the wind and rain, animals, and only God knows what else. Boogie is inside the house with his camera as he shifts through this dumpster fire. Right there, on the chair, in a plastic sleeve, is a picture of Boogie and his mum. A present Boogie gave his mum, possibly longer, but no shorter than 12 years. And it's been sitting there, exposed to the elements, exposed to society, exposed to the addicts that make Boogie's house a home. Untouched, unblemished, on the top of a pile of garbage for Boogie to pick up 12 years later for an emotional moment. When he looks at it, he says, "I love you."
These memories, just shooting up needles all over this place, but there's pictures, old pictures of me that I gave Mom. There's Mom. I love you guys. Thank you for getting me out of this.
There is no way this is true. This has to be staged. I refuse to believe this story, this moment, this concoction Boogie has spun for us, and I don't need to explain why. It's a shameless attempt to sell a narrative, a scheme to extract precious energy of people telling Boogie they love him. He's so brave. He's so kind. That woman abused him. After all she put him through, they still love him. He still loves her. I am now suspicious of Boogie's story from every moment he mentions it. I do not believe it as an honest retelling of what really happened. That said, we cannot know what happened. The only hard evidence is Boogie's word, which is malleable based on his thinking. The parents have been dead for decades, so no one is fighting for them. At the end of the day, I have no proof. None of us do. All we have is endless suspicions. Let's argue that it is true, that everything he says is true. Does that change anything? Does this story of abuse make suicide threats, shaming, bullying appropriate? I would say no. Does it justify spreading false mental health information? I would say no. Does it justify promoting suicide and feeding addictions as an appropriate way to deal with mental health? I would say no. Does it justify sucking people dry of their emotional energy to feed his crippling lack of self-esteem? No. It changes nothing. Boogie is in the state he is in because of his addictions and his refusal to change. The crippling need of other people's energy affects him every waking moment of the day because he is selfish and greedy, because he exploits every situation for maximum emotional value with no sense of shame, but it leads to the question, how did he get away with it? The answer is the nature of YouTubers flock together and attack together. Boogie, by any definition, is in, quote, the in-group. He rubs shoulders with the most powerful of them. This is a structure that is not limited to Boogie, nor did Boogie create it. Go to any community on YouTube and you will notice the constant cross-promotion. And when one of their own is in trouble, YouTubers are ready to snap to their defense. They defend it because one day they may be in trouble, and they simply cannot risk being in the outgroup. To demonstrate the risks of being in the outgroup, I want to talk about Kid Behind the Camera and the Daddy05 scandal. Two scandals of child abuse which Boogie was invested into, despite his responses being polar opposites. By Boogie's own admission, his memories are unreliable, and he has demonstrated an inability to identify abuse outside of his own. This cannot be better shown in the case of Angry Grandpa and his son, Kid Behind the Camera. Kid was in the YouTube in-group, and demonstrably Boogie's friend. When allegations of shocking child abuse committed by Kid occurred, Boogie snapped to his defense. He created a video which is designed to use his credentials and credibility as a child abuse survivor to support Kid's case.
Interview I've ever seen in my life. He glossed over abuse, allowed Michael, aka Kid Behind a Camera, to make excuses for himself and deflect from the questions that were being asked of him, and even coach Michael into making himself look like a better person. My goal here is not to slander Boogie or Michael, but to compare everything that was glossed over in the interview to actual video evidence of abuse, as well as footage of Boogie's acknowledgement that he has seen this video evidence of abuse.
It was beyond the pale that someone who has been abused would use it to diminish and discredit someone else's abuse. There are just no words. Later, Boogie argued that Kid said that the abuse was faked.
Shit. All y'all ever do is buy them gay shit. Gotta get paid to get laid, y'all.
Ever seen the video where Kid Behind a Camera shoves his 2-year-old nephew to the ground by his face and then shoves his shoe in the same child's face until his head is forced backwards? Also the one where AGP throws a toy truck at a 4-year-old's head.
Yep, and I did talk to Mike about that stuff, and Mike's answer was very simple. Those were sketches.
That these abusive images were part of an elaborate stage production. This is plausible, but for it to stick, Boogie would have to apply this standard in all cases, which Boogie, being Boogie, did not do so.
Ever since this Daddy05 situation started, I reached out to Mike Martin and his family to try to talk to them and to help walk them through this. That this is not a normal situation for their family. This is not a normal situation for those kids. That those kids need a drastic change, and it has to start immediately. And more importantly to me, to bring a child advocate into the home, to assess the situation, make sure everything is okay. Now the videos are fake. I'm trying to explain to the man, even if the videos are 100% fake, you need to know that this is not a healthy environment for children. Child stars in Hollywood, they have advocates. Why wouldn't your kids have someone there to protect them?
The video you just watched relation to a different scandal known as Daddy05, which had similar circumstances. The difference in application of standards is because Boogie was friends with Kid and sought to protect him. Daddy05 was not. Rest of the YouTubers destroyed him. Kid was in the in-group, and Daddy05 was not. This is the core of why Boogie has gotten away with much as he has. Because YouTubers protect each other. They cross-promote and cover each other because they simply cannot afford to be in the out-group. It makes you a target. I cannot stress this enough that this is not a conspiracy in a traditional sense. It is a YouTube structural problem. The way YouTube is designed requires content creators to make these bizarre alliances in order to survive. If you ignore this, like Daddy05 did, you are destroyed. That is how Boogie survived. That is how he got away with this beyond the pale behavior. That is why most YouTubers are afraid of him, and he's afraid of them because they know the consequences of being in the outgroup. Boogie simply has deep connections that the rest of us can only dream of, and that is a fact. And people learn that the hard way, but none more so than the girl with the Pikachu tattoo. From here on, we will refer to as Pikachu. Pikachu was a young 20-year-old girl who released a video last year claiming that Boogie emotionally abused her. The core of her claim is that Boogie restricted her movement by staging a confrontation every time she left the house. Because of this, she lost her financial independence and freedom of movement.
Because, oh, he has it so bad. Oh, he has it. When you have so much money in the bank off of people that you are emotionally, verbally manipulating into giving you cash. But things started progressing and got worse. Like at first, asshole was really nice, you know. He'd take me out, you know, there was no issue, you know. he would maybe get me a present once in a while. Mostly hand-me-downs, so he wouldn't have to pay for anything. And then it got to a point where, okay, well, I need to go to Los Angeles because I need to go shoot for some production companies, right? He was hesitant on that. He was like, why don't you just stay at home? Well, I'm not making any money at home right now because it's a slow season and I can't go anywhere because every time I try to leave your house, you scream and yell at me.
Boogie has released many videos saying this is not true, that they were dating, and this was a simple shakedown by an angry ex-girlfriend. Boogie claims that the only evidence is his word against hers.
And then 6 months after that, when she was angry and she was upset, she made a video claiming I was emotionally abusive to her. And at the end of the day, I don't know how to prove that's not true, because it's her word versus mine. But
in typical Boogie fashion, this is a half-truth. I do not believe his story because his credibility is shot, because he has commented on this situation many times, and the details are never the same. The omissions of key data, the obfuscating of the truth requires me to spell it out, and why you simply can't believe Boogie's story. Boogie claims that they were dating, that this was a mutual attraction, a mutual relationship. This is incredibly unlikely. He met Pikachu on a sugar daddy website called Seeking. In the past, he claimed they met on Tinder, which was an obvious lie when his sugar daddy profile was discovered. Seeking deserves better explanation because it's amongst the shadiest website I have ever encountered. It is a prostitution website, but it lives in that legal gray area where instead of exchanging money for services, you exchange unspecified gifts. The website makes it clear that this relationship is of a financial nature. But let's on the face of it ignore these facts. Ignore this noise and use some basic logic. What would a young, pretty 20-year-old girl see in a 45-year-old, graying, ugly, fat, emotionally unstable man? This is a serious question. What could Boogie possibly offer such a young girl? At this time, even his basic hygiene was disgusting, with teeth rotting and falling out of his face. Are people really going to argue that there was a mutual sexual attraction? Are we seriously suggesting that she saw a future with him, that she could be the father of his children? He couldn't emotionally meet her needs because he doesn't know how. When he is called out on his behavior, he becomes passive-aggressive and manipulative. The question is, what could Boogie possibly offer Pikachu? Money. That is the only thing that makes sense. Financial relationship is the only thing that makes sense. And Pikachu's career supports that conclusion. Pikachu has at different times been many things: a whore, a stripper, an escort, an aspiring porn star. Boogie is a man who will threaten suicide to absolute strangers to satiate his emotional needs. Is it really such a stretch that her claim that he would stage confrontations every time she left the house? Is it really that hard to believe? To use her as an emotional supply for his narcissism is not outside the realm of possibility. Thanks to Boogie's constant need to talk, the core claim she alleges was recently confirmed by Boogie because he is a man of contradiction.
And to be honest with you, like she said that I didn't want her to leave my house. I wanted her to leave my house. The only time I ever asked her not to leave was one time I was very sick and I needed some help. But other than that, most of the time I was asking her to leave.
So she was telling the truth. Yes, there are provisos, but through Boogie's words, the core claim that she was confronted by Boogie for trying to leave is proven true by Boogie's own words. When you compare and contrast Boogie's statements, there is always contradictions, always facts omitted. He always says it's lacking in context, but when you get to the heart of it, he is always an unreliable narrator. So when he says that it's her word against his, that is half true, because it's actually his word and her word together against his. As mentioned, Pikachu is a whore, and a whore's ability to make money in 2019 is dependent on the internet. That's why when Boogie went on Keemstar's show, Drama Alert, she was obviously spooked. Imagine, you're a 20-year-old girl, and you see this video of two very powerful 40-year-old YouTubers, one of whom, Keemstar, has a notorious reputation of destroying the careers for aspiring internet users, calling you basically a shakedown artist, a gold-digging whore. And while it didn't use her name, the message was clear. If you keep going with this, we will destroy you. It's shock and awe in a video form. A shot across the bow. The power relationship is all off. Millions of fans between these two men. And in with YouTube and its cabal. All against a 20-year-old girl. Pikachu never stood a chance. Which is why her story died and Boogie got off scot-free. What happened to Pikachu simply was not fair. It was unjust. The YouTubers destroyed this young woman and completely destroyed our ability to figure out what exactly happened. And there's really nothing else left to say. Boogie is at the crossroads in his life. He has nearly sucked everyone around him dry. But his black cup is empty. He is losing subscribers, and while I'm making this video, others have beaten me to the punch and created videos detailing Boogie's antics. The criticism is snowballing. In response, Boogie has released yet again another apology video, and it is a train wreck. Everything I've mentioned is touched on, and there are a few new things. Explanations on his weight failures, sob stories about his parents, and massive omissions of basic facts. The only thing that mattered, Boogie committing himself to some sort of long-term mental health center over the course of many years to work on his addictions, his lack of character and personality flaws were omitted. Boogie's fate is nearly sealed, because I can see the future. Right here, in this room, I have a crystal ball. I am the ghost of Christmas yet to come. I can see what happens next in the life of Boogie2988. If he continues to be the black cup of narcissism of everyone else's self-esteem. Would you like to know? Gather round, turn off the lights, because you will get a glimpse of Boogie's future. Boogie will die by his hand through doing something stupid or his heart no longer able to process the fat he regularly consumes. At the end, he will be unhappy, he will be lonely, a sad mess of a creature blaming his parents, the internet, and the world for his failures, with absolutely no ability to self-reflect on what he could have done differently. No insight that maybe it was all his fault, not some of it, not half of it, not even 3/4. All of it. All of it was his fault. That lack of insight will push everyone who ever was close to him away. And when that end comes, there will be no one there that truly knows or loves him, who's not there out of obligation. They will be there for the clicks, the views, or try to stake a claim on his fortune. At the end, Boogie will be alone. His fans will be upset for a time, but they will move on to the next YouTuber who will suck them dry. For a couple of days, YouTubers and commenters will post rest in peace messages, maybe even start a hashtag. Perhaps they will even make a video or two. Lucky, some corporation will use the opportunity to express public remorse and enshrine him in some silly video game. But no one will truly mean it. They did it because it was polite. Because it was the right thing to do. Because it's not nice to shame the dead, and people are mostly good. But secretly they'll be relieved because they know they will no longer be exploited with threats of suicide at their door. No longer having to deal with 3 a.m. phone calls of a 45-year-old man screaming at them for not loving him enough. They will no longer be beholden to the whims of an unstable man-child. Life will be better for them, and they will move on. Then Boogie will be forgotten. No children to carry on his name. No friend will discuss Boogie as a man worth knowing to others. The best he can hope for is whispers of his name in a dark room for a couple years. But he probably won't even have that. The only evidence that he was here, on this planet, would be a silly YouTube channel with 2,000 videos. That is Boogie's future if he does not get help. A life existing only to satiate addiction. I could be wrong, but you know I'm not. Because deep down, you the viewer, knew it too.